We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, a podcast about Crime Traveller here on the a podcast about Red Dwarf here on the We Made This podcast network. And you may have thought it was about Crime Traveller because this is our 7th episode in a row about Crime Traveller, because we do thoroughly enjoy covering as much tat related to Red Dwarf as we possibly can. My name is Mark Adams and I am the main reason for this bollocks. And with me at this time is Carl Bryan. Hello, Carl.
I'm glad you finally started admitting this on air.
And the other person laughing is Matt Latham. Hello, Matt.
Hello.
So, yeah, I mean, we do make very tenuous links to Red Dwarf, but 8 episodes in 8 weeks, taking up basically the winter, is a bit naughty. I don't think I care. I've enjoyed it so far. How about you two?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this run so far. It's probably my favourite of the specials we've done. And the fact we've been able to run through it episode by episode, I've really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, I've had fun doing all of it, but I'm surprised how much I've really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed going through Crime Traveller. So far, it's been great.
I think what we've done is perhaps a little bit indulgent, considering when we've looked at Britas or Prince Among Men or whatever, we've done the whole series in one go. But we're all sci-fi nerds, and this is very sci-fi, and so's Red Dwarf, so I don't know. I can vaguely kind of sort of justify it in my head, and I'll be brutally honest, I don't care.
There's also a lot more episodes of British Empire than there is of Crime Traveller.
And also, in the interest of being level about what the cast have got up to outside of Red Dwarf, there ain't that much Chloe Annett, so we've really got to wring it for all it's worth.
Which is a shame, but we've very much kind of sang her praises, so I'm sure we'll do that again. But anyway, we're looking at Crime Traveller Episode 7, The Lottery Experiment, and it was first broadcast on the 12th of April 1997, which does mean that Series 7 of Red Dwarf had finally finished. And in its Saturday night slot, it was basically, as we've established, it was kind of like Doctor Who's kind of slot, because Doctor Who didn't exist anymore. Shall we get on with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Holly is tinkering with the machine, and then Jeff arrives with some flowers, and Danny gives him some advice on flowers on his way in. He then gives him some from a resident that's away that wouldn't get them in time, because he's noticed that the flowers that Jeff has bought are flowers that Holly doesn't like. How does Danny know this?
He checks the bins.
I'm the one who empties the bins, I think is the line, isn't it?
Yeah, he knows what she throws away, and she throws away, was it carnations that he'd got?
Yeah.
It just seems really fucking stalky, and Danny's been lovely so far.
I don't know. I think it's quite sweet that Danny, he's been there for so long. We hear about it in the last episode as well, that he's been there for at least 5 years. And so's Holly. So he this is someone he sees at least 4 times a day. I think it's nice. Maybe she lets him in at Christmas and they have a sherry and have a natter, and then, there's this whole side of Danny that I don't think we see. Also, I love the fact him and Slade are quite laddie now. They're pals.
Oh, I read it really differently. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I actually like your explanation, but I read it as Danny's massive crush on Holly has become a little bit weird. Am I just a horrible person who assumes bad shit about people?
You're a horrible person who assumes bad shit about people, Mark.
Yeah.
I think that Danny can give Carl a run for his money in terms of the Jeff's Holly shipping. I think as we come to these next 2 episodes, I'm pretty sure that Danny is team Jolly or Slolly or Haid or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Slunter.
That's what we're calling it.
Slunter.
Slunter? That is what we're calling them from now on.
Yeah.
Slunter.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake.
If it was like a medieval thing, he'd be like the knight's assistant kind of thing. I've never really picked up in it that he's got a crush on Holly. I think he's just a really sweet bloke.
Oh, I thought he did.
No, I was assuming he was just nice.
Just nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You okay, Mark?
I mean, maybe. So, we first see Slunter together when he gets to her flat. And Holly loves the flowers. And they very briefly discuss some time travel before she reads the note. And it's signed from Pumpkin. And if this isn't a opportunity to discuss our favourite pet names, I don't know what is. Have either of you ever had a pet name?
No.
Oh, I can't remember. I don't think I have. Well, a friend of mine, it's not like a pet name, but a friend of mine calls me Stud.
Wow, that's
which sounds
good.
More erotic than it is. Yeah, she just refers to me as Stud, but not for anything romantic.
You've really not had a pet name, ever?
No, don't think so.
What about you, Matt? No?
No.
Oh. Well, I'm not going to tell you what mine is now, then. I'm not playing if you're not playing.
I'd play if I had, didn't he?
Is it anything to do with wearing glasses, being magic, or being bald?
No.
Oh, okay.
So, my first very serious boyfriend, he noticed that every morning when I woke up, I was a bit woozy and always kind of staggered to the bathroom. And he said I looked like Bambi. So my pet name from him was Bambi for about 4 years.
Aww.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I've never had anything that sweet, Mark, no.
I know. I dumped him and I shouldn't have done. Anyway, moving on.
You're right, Mark.
No, I'm not. I'm clearly in a weird fucking mood.
Yeah. So, again, so this is kind of what we've kind of seen in the past where the show kind of wants to be serialized or is at this point now quite apparent that it needs to be kind of viewed in a certain order. So we've got an attempt at emotional fallout, which if this was like 2 years later, right, probably would have had a lot more kind of throughout the episode of like Holly's reaction to what Slade did last week. Whereas here, it kind of goes like, I'm mad at you for like the kind of, and this is like the emotional cliffhanger for episode 6. And immediately, as soon as like Michael French flutters his eyelids, has some flowers, that tension's gone. And it seems kind of like brushed under the carpet a bit.
True, but Michael French is handsome and does have that jacket. I'd probably forgive him if he gave me a bunch of flowers.
Yeah, it's strange because I was kind of waiting for this episode because I don't know if I mentioned it in the last episode that she does immediately forgive him at the sight of flowers. I don't know. Maybe it was just the thing of she was working really hard on the machine and he turned up and she was just like, oh, I can't be asked to be mad at you anymore. I've got too much on. Life's easier if I'm not mad at you. And you brought me flowers. So, but yeah, it's a strange one but like you say, this episode to me feels a bit like when Doctor Who came back, there was always that thing of the episode before the finale would always be like a fluff piece. And for a bit, this felt like that for me. It would always be slightly more lighthearted and more self-contained almost.
So my comparison would be Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, Outside, Out of Mind, Go Fish. Seasons 1 and 2, Buffy the Vampire Slayer have examples of that.
Yeah, I'd say that's very true, actually, with Buffy. Not so much as it gets towards the later seasons, but yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, but that's what this one kind of feels to me. And I don't know whether it was because I rewatched this prior to us doing the record today, so I watched it on 1.25 speed. But all the running around, it really did. And the situation that Slade gets into, it really makes it feel like a farce. Like a proper, like, old school French farce of like, oh, I'm going to ring and, we're going to miss this person here and I'm going to get caught up in this. It just needed like a Benny Hill track and it could have been. It's not the most serious of episodes, although there's a thing about it that we'll get to in a bit, which was I didn't actually see the twist coming. when he works it out, I genuinely didn't actually remember that at all. So I can't remember if I watched this one the first time it went round. I must have done, but yeah, I genuinely didn't remember how they solved this one. So that made it quite good fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think whilst you're right that it is one of the more flippant episodes, it does address one of the long-running almost gags about, well, why don't you just win the lottery?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's actually quite important, even though it is perhaps a little bit more silly than usual.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of shows involving time travel probably wouldn't go for this, in the I'm going to try and win the lottery. But it's a conversation that a lot of sci-fi fans have probably had at the end of a long night, or just when they're shooting the breeze, just like, oh, try and win the lottery. Oh, you won't be able to win the lottery because of this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, how would you do it? And, this kind of thing. I'm guessing it is something that people have talked about. And a lot of shows haven't attempted to do something where they genuinely try and do something purely selfish like this. Slade can dress it up as much as I'm doing it for Holly and, to help the machine. But he's helping the machine so he can still solve crime and look amazing.
Yeah.
And he, as we find out at the end of the episode, he wanted some of the money as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're chilling on the sofa and he asks her about a day. She's missed a lecture and he's been to stress counselling training. And he asks her to put the telly on and it's the lottery. And because obviously it's a BBC programme, they can use the actual National Lottery coverage, which I quite liked.
Man, this was a throwback.
Yeah. Saturday night, the entire nation would stop and watch a 15-minute program. No, it was in the middle of like Noel's house party or something like that.
Mm.
Did you not think it was a bit strange how they went from "I'm really mad at you" to "I'm lying with my head on your lap on a pillow on the sofa together"? It almost felt like we missed an episode.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's some truth in what you say about it just completely writing off any of the unpleasantness of the previous week.
But I was happy to see it. As a fan of Slunter, I was happy to see them this close, especially seeing as we're getting towards the end of the series.
And that's the thing, isn't it? We all ship Slunter, and so therefore we want to see Slunter all snuggled up.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like a space captain in a really bad movie. Ship Slunter.
Sounds like a disease.
It's someone like Lister probably knew when he was young. Oh yeah, me and Slunter used to go around. Go around like, doing stuff and, stuff. Me and Slunter.
We've become so very quickly derailed. Oh.
Were we ever really on the rails, Mark?
Yeah.
Probably not. It's just using the machine with the numbers. And they basically argue how to circumnavigate the paradox by him telling her in the past, which kind of almost sort of vaguely makes sense. She decides to give it a go as a scientific experiment. And I think as experiments go, it kind of makes sense. She's a scientist and she would like to experiment around proving herself right. So I'm not so sure it's completely Slade's manipulation. I think he actually, whether he means to or not, genuinely kind of perks her interest because she kind of wants him to be wrong as well.
Yeah, she knows it's not going to work, but she's intrigued because it's almost harmless, isn't it? It's sort of like, well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does work, we're super rich. What the hell? It's a strange one. But yeah, you can see that she's almost looking at him like, oh, you've thought about this. But he does make sense. He does actually like, well, yeah, why shouldn't this work? And this is one of the biggest examples in the show of time being a character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sort of time will stop you.
Frankly, she's being a good scientist by, even though she thinks it will achieve nothing, it's almost like she has to cover it because that's what scientists do. They look at every single angle to prove something right.
Yeah, it's a weird one because she's obviously a scientist. She believes in science and she's very with that. But she also believes in this higher power of time. So in itself is a bit of a juggling act, I think, in terms of, because in the way that Slade's putting it forward, scientifically, yeah, that should work. Absolutely, that should work, because he won't have the piece of paper. He tells her, she puts it on, it's fine. But then she's got this thing of, this presence of time and time having a sense of justice and things like that. It's an odd one.
So they set up the machine and he promises to behave. He has the numbers written down and then memorizes them. As soon as he travels, he writes them down again. He's got 12 hours. And then he knocks on Holly's door, but she's not there.
Do you think that they have got shit, my past self has just walked out of the living room contingency? I mean, like, if Holly was in the bedroom and then suddenly Slade walks in, they must be on edge, just in case. I mean,
yeah.
I think we've talked about how they having to get back to the same location makes it really weird that they never see each other time travelling.
Yeah, I mean, like, if Holly's sat in the living room reading a book and suddenly, like, Slunter appears, that's going to be very interesting, isn't it?
Maybe it's the character of time actively prevents that from happening when they travel back?
Possibly, yeah, because the character of the quote-unquote character of time seems to be, like, have more screen time than Holly in this episode, because it's interesting how that plays out. So I'm wondering if fate, or the concept of fate and the time traveller kind of perception of it, means they never kind of cross paths. Maybe that's the way of writing around that massive plot hole that always bugs me.
Does it bug you, Matt? I never know.
Yeah, it does a bit. I don't think I mentioned it that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he asks Danny, and she's just headed off in her car. And Danny advises him to buy flowers, which is really cute because that's what they were talking about in the previous scene. I do like stuff like that.
The smile on Slade's face of, like, there's genuine affection there, isn't there? There's, for us, like, thanks, Danny. Yeah, we ship Slanny here as well.
I don't ship Slanny.
It's a purely platonic thing.
Slanny and Slunter.
Yeah.
Slanny and Slunter.
They're the Keith Dagger baddies, aren't they? So
Yeah.
Carry on, Mark.
So at the station, Jeff asks after Holly, but she's not arrived yet. He writes the numbers on her board. Grisham finds him and tells him the course is cancelled and that she needs him. She then brings him up to date about a tip-off for a criminal called Mickey Sissons, who's going to steal some bullion. And you're right about this being a bit fucking hapless. Mickey Sissons is stealing bullion. It seems like something that's been written by a child.
Yeah. Mickey Sissons does sound like Sue Johnson made it up on the spot and she lifted it from Brookside. It's like you can imagine that, Mickey Sissons has held up the petrol station, or Mickey Sissons is causing havoc among the close, but not Mickey Sissons, a bullion robber. And who robs bullion anymore? It's all NFTs now.
I mean, to be fair, robbing bullion probably is something that Brookside would have done. They did everything else.
Yeah. Did you ever see the last ever episode of Brookside?
No.
My God.
No.
It was. Well, they moved it to late at night for a start. So there was swearing and all sorts of stuff. And in the last episode or so, they had this drug dealer who was just, everybody in the close hated them. And then in the last episode, somebody breaks into this dealer's house and they hang him from the window.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
That's grim.
And it's not revealed who it is. And the close apparently is being closed up anyway. It's being demolished. So they all move on with their lives and stuff like this. And it's really weird. It's a strange one to go out on.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, she wants to, and I quote, nobble him. And then Holly arrives just as I know, right? Nobble him. Yes. Holly arrives, but just as they're leaving in the car, and he misses her to tell her about the numbers. At the Dukan Bank, they discuss the 3 million worth of bullion with the bank manager. 3 million! The fucking 90s.
Also, the bank manager's name is Dukan. Who names a bank after themselves?
Mr. Ducan.
Yeah, it's... you'd think... Well, this is the thing, though. You'd think if he's... I'm guessing he doesn't own just one bank. But if you're the guy that the banks are named after, you're not working in a local branch. You're in the Bahamas somewhere on your own private island.
It does feel fucking weird, doesn't it? That they've had the authenticity of the actual lottery show, and then there's the Ducan Bank.
Yeah.
But why didn't they just use an HSBC? Why didn't they just use a Midland Bank?
Yeah, it's like the head of Debenhams isn't working as a line manager in the head branch of Debenhams. It's weird. It's weird. So's his office.
It could just be easily the same name. I mean, there's got to be some person called Smith who works in WH Smiths.
That's a weird one, though, isn't it? You walk past the bank and it's got your name. You're like, I've got to work my way up the ladder until I get a Toblerone with my name on it, and they project the logo of the bank behind me.
It's a Toblerone with my name on it. You're a fucking idiot. I love it. Oh, no. I have never wanted a high-flying office job, but now I want a Toblerone with my name on it. I might have to order myself one and run it through the business accounts.
If you ever, again, want to add to the potential Shipwrecks and COMATOSE merch, instead of, like, and then Queeg shows up, you can have the one next to it. Toblerone with my name on it.
Toblerone with my name on it. I want a Toblerone with my name on it. You can get a Toblerone with your name on it. Yeah. We've just had Christmas, and for Christmas, at Christmas, you can get a Toblerone with your name on it if you've got, like, a modern name.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Mark is modern enough to have a Toblerone. You could get an Ernest, because I noticed that because my nephew's called Ernest, but I didn't notice whether you could get a Mark.
Oh, you must be able to get one.
Anyway, moving on. This is just... We are being very weird this week, even weirder than usual. Yeah, so basically Grisha wants Ducan from Ducan Bank to help with the arrest and allow them to try and catch Sissons. And she puts her reputation on the line. And then there's a brief moment where Jeff picks up what's called fool's gold, which is what kind of people thought was gold sometimes.
Pyrite. I really thought that was going to play in more.
Me too.
I mean, I'm guessing it was a red herring, but the amount of him like looking at it and the camera zooms in on it a bit and it's like, yep, there's going to be something about fool's gold in this one. And it's like, oh, no, there isn't.
No. Maybe that was the whole point of the red herring, was that, you know, you were the fool for thinking there was going to be fool's gold involved. Maybe.
True.
I don't know. Yeah. Holly arrives at her office and absent-mindedly rubs out the lottery numbers.
In the most unnatural piece of acting you've ever seen in your life.
I mean, Chloe Annett's great, but there is truth in what you say.
Mm-hmm. She literally stands, her body facing the board, but her head is completely looking right at a piece of paper while she rubs it. It looks so unnatural. But, you know, you've got to forward the plot, haven't you?
And surely she'd have checked what was on the board before wiping it.
I thought about this. I'm guessing that she's like, well, I know what's on the board because I put it there, so I can just wipe that off. But obviously she was she really caught up in what was on that piece of paper, and she had a bag from Pret-a-Manger in her hand, so I'm guessing that obviously that takes precedent.
I mean, I quite liked Pret-a-Manger back in the day. I don't think I've had it for years. It was kind of posh at one point.
Oh, it's in French. In the 90s, if it was in French, that meant posh.
True. So the stakeout is set up and Slade can't access a phone. He borrows Nikki's mobile phone, but it's not charged.
Yeah, I forgot how the lifespan of mobile phones is actually really quite short.
I didn't have a mobile phone at this point, but I was only 18. I know kids have them now, but in the 90s, the kind of cost of actually having a phone was so high that I only got one when I went to university because my mum and dad wanted me to have one and paid for it.
Yeah.
I couldn't have afforded it on my own.
It does look like, because my dad had one, and this one that they've got here, which is, you know, like a plastic brick, is very similar to the one that my dad had, which was, you know, it wasn't any of your Sony or your Apple. It was made by Bosch.
By Black & Decker.
Yeah. So it was very much a tool that he had. I had it for years, like literally probably I had it up until last year because I used to be like, look at this thing. And yeah, it did bring back memories of like, the battery needs charging, but that would take, 12 hours for it to fully charge.
Mr. DeCan heads to a storeroom and someone is breaking into it through the bricking, but he doesn't see it. Back at the stakeout, Jeff is antsy and wants to go to a call box. So he does, even though he was not supposed to, and he was supposed to be a good police officer. And there is a queue for the call box.
Yeah, Nicky and... he left Nicky and Morris in charge. What more do you need?
Yeah, I mean, both of them can form one competent... 3/4 of a competent police officer.
Anyway, the robbers enter, armed and wearing balaclavas. They demand to see the manager. Jeff is still waiting for the box. They lead the manager to the vault. Jeff uses his warrant to access the phone box. The manager is forced to open the vault at gunpoint. There's a lot of quick cuts here. They knock him out and they enter for the bullion, the 3 million worth of bullion. Holly is away from her desk and the guard hits an alarm. Those cuts were so quick.
Yeah. I like the fact that it keeps cutting back and forth to Jeff trying to get in this phone box, and only at the very end does he go, I'm a copper, knocks on the thing and shows the badge.
I would argue that because of the character that Jeff is, the yellow jacket, the kind of... He's got a fucking gun, and he's super, super cool. Surely he would have had a mobile phone.
Yeah. Maybe when you join the force, it's like mobile phone or gun. You can't have both.
I mean...
Phone or gun,
What would you pick out of those two choices? You'd have to go for the gun, wouldn't you?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gun and stunt double or mobile phone. Although, I'll get to that in a minute.
So, Slade finally runs in and runs to the vault, but the bullion is gone and they escaped through the storeroom. Slade follows and they shoot at him and throw a fucking grenade. Where did they get a grenade?
This shot was pretty cool because it looks like they've triggered... Is it like a squib or something that sets off like a controlled explosion? And it looks like it's Michael French, right, in a practical effect. So he's in like a blast radius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what I was going to say. It's definitely Michael French, and that was what made that so cool.
Yeah. And that was kind of really cool.
Yeah.
The timing of it as well, because he does like just move in the nick of time. Because, I mean, we've seen in Red Dwarf before, when squibs go off, you can get hurt. Because it is still an explosion, even though it's a controlled one. So watching this where the grenade goes off, initially I was like, a grenade would do way much more damage than this. But when the grenade goes off, he really does like, it's almost like he sees it coming towards him and he moves, rather than he moves and then the explosion goes off. It's a really good stunt. And I think it's not something that you almost expect out of a show like this.
I think it's the kind of stunt that it's a classic this wouldn't happen now stunt, because like you say, it is Michael French.
Yeah.
It's cool though.
Oh yeah. I mean, the gunshots that go off are very close as well. And then they throw the grenade and it causes a bloody big explosion. Even though I'd say it doesn't do as much damage as I thought, there's a lot. There's sparks, there's fire, there's everything. And it's Michael French stood right next to it. It's really, really impressive. But later, yeah, they wouldn't do it now. God, no.
So the grenade prevents him from following them quickly, and they have time to shed their gear into some nearby... I know there's a British word for it, but I'm going to have to say dumpster.
Bin,
yeah. Wheelie bin.
It's a bin.
No, but wheelie bin suggests like your classic thing in your back garden wheelie bin, doesn't it?
Oh, these are the ones you find out at the back of pubs.
It's a big bin.
Yeah. All right, big bin.
Sorry, Mark, you're Black Country. It's a word you should know. A yow bin.
I'm not even going to dignify that. Slade has no chance of spotting them in a busy market, and he guesses at a woman's large bag, but she speeds off in a car. Jeff gives Morris the number plate and then heads to make a call. The phones are out because of the explosion. He writes Holly a note with the numbers and asks one of the random plods to give it to Holly at the station.
I do enjoy this bit with the market because you see, I mean, you haven't really had a chance to see the villains so far, but in this scene, he literally stands next to them and one of them even looks dead at him. And I quite like that, how smoothly they got away. And you almost think he's picked somebody completely random when he sees the hold all.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was a really good little scene of like, oh, the villains have got away with it, and they're actually good villains. They're not bumbling crooks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's at this point that you surely have to question the ethics of his own personal gain and it clearly affecting what he's supposed to be working on. And it continues for the whole fucking thing.
He's Jeff Slade, Mark. If he can multitask, he's probably very confident in the fact he can solve a bank robbery and buy a lottery ticket. It seems like the lottery ticket's proving more difficult to him than solving a bullion robbery in this episode.
Well, I think what's interesting with what eventually happens with this episode is that it basically gives Slade a time limit in order to try and stop Grisham getting sacked. Yeah. So I think that kind of shifts his kind of perspective, because I've got a feeling that if this was something that like, oh, they just got to replace something and everyone's fine, Grisham's job's not on the line, you'd have probably just kind of postponed it and then gone in the time machine and then come back and try to clear or save Grisham's job. But because I think because we'll be told in like the next couple of scenes that going, well, yeah, they're going to hang me for this, or I'm going to have to hand my notice in out of just of a colossal fuck up that she's done. That kind of adds that time limit to it. I think perhaps that I don't think the threat or the existential threat of Grisham's sacking is as perhaps as desperate as I think the show thinks it is. I think they probably could, with a bit of a tweaking, they probably could have given Slade a more like he cannot get to the time machine without having to do this first. I think the episode's trying to perhaps show that Slade's got some respect for Grisham, but I don't think it kind of fully sets up. So I think when, Mark, you're saying that you're having this question about Slade putting the lottery ticket first at times, I think the episode perhaps fails slightly in ironing out why Slade needs to save Grisham and not just spend most of his time working out the lottery and then saving Grisham afterwards.
Yeah. This episode to me as well felt almost a bit like the time travel, the I must get back to the machine aspect almost didn't matter.
Yeah.
You could take away the aspect of him travelling back in time and it be an episode about him trying to solve a bank robbery and buy a lottery ticket at the same time.
Yes, something almost classic sitcom-like.
Yeah. I do like that there's a couple of things. One, that when he signs the note to Holly, he puts a kiss. That was nice.
Yes, I've noticed that.
And the debut of, I don't think it's his debut, but it's certainly the first time he's named, which is Charlie.
Yeah.
And it does almost feel like, Charlie, you've never been needed for plot until this point. Take this letter for me back to the station.
Hello, extra. Would you like a few lines? Yes, please.
Well, this is the thing. I'm sure he's in one of the first episodes as the random detectives that are all stood around.
Is he the guy that Holly kind of flummoxes when she escapes jail?
Might be. But yeah, I'm sure he's in another episode, like as a detective that doesn't speak, and he's in like one of the debriefing scenes. But in this one, he's got a full, plot arc, hasn't he? He's got to deliver a letter, and then he gets a phone call, and then he's got to get called away. And in fan fiction, I'm sure there's a spin-off somewhere of Charlie.
Charlie Traveller.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure there isn't. Unless you've written that fan fiction, and please let us know at Red Dwarf Pod on Twitter. Anyway.
Crime Unravelers, the specials.
I know, right?
Yeah.
The bank manager is livid and is talking to Nikki, and he's completely blaming Grisham. Slade is not on Grisham's favourites list at this particular point, and she wants to speak to him. She's very angry, and it's because he left the stakeout. He explains that they used a tunnel. She's worried about getting fired, and Slade is actually clearly quite upset about it. Sissons has been under surveillance and hasn't left his home. They need to find the gold to save the career of Grisham.
It's quite a nice scene where he because obviously Slade's very like bouncy and jolly and almost like solving crime's a game, which it kind of has become now. He's been time traveling, but the realization that he might lose Grisham seems to kind of rock him to his core. Like, oh yeah, there's stakes in this, and this can happen, and that's kind of nice to see. Also, the revelation that Grisham's married as well. When Nikki corrects Mr. DeCann, it's like in series 2, I'd like to have felt that we'd met Mr. Grisham. And him just being as tough and hating Slade because that's all that she talks about when she gets home.
Yes, that would have been a great line, a great gag, yeah. Charlie is back at the station. It's actually this point that we find out his name is Charlie. And he can't find Holly. He gets a call from his wife and misses Holly as she speeds away. The team are at the bins looking for leads, and they discuss how they moved so fast with £750 worth of gold. They then discover that the girl with the bag's plates have been run, and they're going to go and speak to her because they've got her name.
As I said, it's quite farcical, some of the misunderstandings and the missing of Holly, and she was just here and not that. But the Charlie is on the phone and Holly goes in and comes out again is quite well done, I thought, in terms of timing. They must take them a few times to get it right. And I think they know in this episode that, it's a bit of a farce.
Back at the station, Holly is rushed off, so Charlie tapes the note to her door. And this whole plot is painfully 90s, because literally you'd send a WhatsApp or a text or a Facebook message.
Yeah.
Or you'd phone them, or you'd phone someone that was with them, etc., etc. This is probably the most weirdly dated episode of the lot, actually.
Oh, hang on. You know, times when WhatsApp and Instagram and messaging systems go down, is that because someone's time travelled and tried to message the lottery numbers to someone?
Ooh. For fuck's sake, Matt.
It could be.
That is the most ridiculous conspiracy theory I've ever heard. I love it. I hope it's true. It's not.
If you think it's true, tweet us at Red Dwarf Pod.
So, Slade is in the car with Nikki and he borrows his mobile. He doesn't get through at the office and is put through to her car phone. Do you remember them? She goes through a tunnel and they get cut off. It's just fucking such a farce, isn't it?
It's great. And it's, again, the car phone that's never been mentioned at any point before this series.
Car phone.
But yeah, again, it's kind of like the weird thing that time seems to happen. Like time seems to happen. I'm wondering whether if there's a character of time, like I don't know, like Death in Discworld, where there's like this anthropomorphic kind of personification of time going, oh bloody hell, these two are trying to mess things up again, and then suddenly change history so that Holly's suddenly had this phone the whole time.
Maybe it's Morris. Maybe time is disguised as Morris and just lulls them into a false sense of security by coming across like an idiot.
Good. Moving on. They arrive at the girl's work and she's not got anything in the bag. Jeff attempts to send a fax to Holly. A fax! But it's out of paper. A fucking fax! This is so 90s.
It's still used in Japan.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, but this isn't Japan.
He's 2 minutes away from someone explaining to him what electronic mail is.
Right, my dad's still got a fax. He's still got a fax.
Who does he fax?
He doesn't. He just hasn't thrown it away. And it's been plugged in for about 10 years, and I don't think he's received one. He's been retired for 10 years, and he's still got a fucking fax in the house. And when you phone his answer phone, it goes, "Hello, this is Chris Adams. To start a fax, please start transmission now." On his answer phone in 2023.
Oh, man. Is your dad one of those people who said, "I bought it, damn it, I am keeping it"?
Oh, God, his house is so full of so much shit he doesn't want, need, or use.
We should fax your dad.
I mean, if I knew anywhere where you could fax, I would actually fax him with, "You don't need a fax anymore, Pops." Oh, I want to do that so much now. There's got to be somewhere where I can send him that fax.
I'm pretty sure you could do something with like Google Docs where you can send it as a fax.
I can just feel the evil plans that Mark is now forming.
Oh, dear. It's not like he doesn't deserve it. He's got a fucking fax machine in 2023.
It's like the episode of the US version of The Office where they pretend to send fax messages to and say they're from Dwight from the future, and they give him instructions to do stuff.
Anyway, my fax distraction. They're speculating if the gold bars leave a trace, and they go past the robbers, who are spooked. They call Sissons, who says stick to the plan. The police will follow him, not them. Slade turns up at the university to try and find Holly's lecture, but he struggles to find the room. Absent-mindedly, he leaves the bag at the front desk, and they think it's a bomb, so they evacuate. So he actually caused the lecture to not happen, and as such, by the time he gets to the room, he doesn't find her. What I thought was fascinating about this is how topical it was, because this was filmed, maybe a year and a half, maximum 2 years after the Manchester bombing?
Yeah, not that long at all. I think it's filmed. No, it wouldn't be. Maybe it was filmed in London, but I know a lot of production was in Manchester for a lot of these things, so it could have been shot in Manchester.
I think regardless, it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, bomb in all of UK history, isn't it? The Manchester bomb. It took out a whole fucking Marks and Sparks.
I can imagine so. I would say, obviously, it was quite a while ago now. Maybe a lot of people think of the 7/7 bombings.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, obviously.
Oh, at the time, absolutely.
I actually arrived in Manchester in 97, so not long after the bomb. And there are areas of Manchester that were basically kind of like gigantic boarded areas that you couldn't see. It was harder to get into than Fort Knox.
I'm glad you clarified that you turned up in Manchester after the bomb.
But yeah, thanks. I was 19 when I went to I moved to Manchester, but it was really odd to almost see a big city being rebuilt. And for anyone who knows Manchester, that area is now where the Triangle is and where the Printworks are as well. So stuff like the Hard Rock Cafe and all of those kind of like fountains, and indeed the rebuilt M&S, that was all completely blocked off for a couple of years in the late 90s. So I think the whole bomb scare thing was almost weirdly edgy in this kind of flippant episode. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it because, frankly, I'm Mancunian.
I think it might be one of those things that, if you are Mancunian, but again, I mean, we were all there at the time, but I say we're all quite young. So it might not have. I mean, it's a show about a time traveling copper in a bright yellow jacket. So I maybe wouldn't have thought that. Maybe it was something for the adults. Really, it's like, oh, that's a bit close. Maybe it got complaints at the time. We don't know.
Back at the HQ, Slade ensures the note is taped to Holly's desk, and Grisham is really, really down and thinks she's going to lose her job. Morris tells them that Sissons is on the move, so they all head out to follow him. Holly gets back to the office and her lab results are put on her desk right on top of the note.
What I quite like is the almost crystal kind of effect that opens up the title sequence. They have that kind of sound effect that always seems to happen when they try and do anything to do with time or kind of transitions and stuff. Whenever anything which these farcical kind of moments where time or fate seems to stop Holly from witnessing any messages from Slade, that music cue appears throughout the whole episode.
So what you're saying is it's a bit like Bouncer's music from Neighbours. Whenever Bouncer's on screen, they had special music for the dog.
You're showing your age there.
If it helps, I can repeat it.
They have just announced Neighbours is coming back already, so in the last week or so.
Again, with the timey-wimey, you've just basically pointed out that we recorded this in November. You realise this isn't going out till February. And I'm keeping that in.
That's fine.
do, 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 do. Bomb, 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 bum, 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 bum. I really liked Bouncer in Neighbours when I was a kid. Anyway, Slade, Nicky and Morris get in a car to go and pursue Sissons. Sissons is in a cafe and they stake it out. He uses a newspaper to switch with an impersonator.
I was quite impressed at the switch, actually. I thought this was really well done.
Yeah, I thought this was good. And again, this thing, they're good criminals. Yes, he's got a silly name, but they are good criminals. Initially, my first thing, and I don't know why I thought this, was when he went into this cafe, that is a shithole looking cafe. It just looks so filthy. But yeah,
I think it was supposed to look a bit like a shithole cafe, surely.
Yeah. But is the cafe woman in on it, or is she just going, weird people in my cafe, happens all the time? How far does the conspiracy go, Mark?
Have they bribed the cafe woman?
Yeah.
We'll never know. Yeah, I think you're right. They probably would have got away with it if it hadn't been for time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In the car, they're chatting about the lottery and they spot a graffiti artist. It's at this point that Slade has an epiphany.
Just before that, there's a nice line where I think it's Slade saying, "Oh, we're here at Crimes Are Us," and then I quite like, because we don't get much characterization from Morris, but I quite like when he goes through the lottery numbers, because he seems to kind of really want to join in the conversation and not just like make snide remarks at Slade or Nicky. And like he's got like his age, he's 28, and his girlfriend's 32, and he was in the scout.
His scout number's 11. Yeah. There is a genuine moment in it where it looks like they're getting on.
Yeah.
As well. It's almost as if they know that they're irritated at each other. Banter is just a front, and they do actually like each other.
Well, there's no one else to perform in front of.
No.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
It's the Rimmer and Lister thing of they keep each other sane by just bickering. And then there's their son, Nicky, in the middle.
Yeah. There's also quite a nice, very brief, kind of almost philosophical conversation, which probably got cut for time, where they talk about is graffiti an art form. And as someone who I've never graffitied or anything, but there's like, there's a great area over the last like 10 years been redeveloped in Birmingham called Digbeth, and they've got graffiti artists to paint all the walls and stuff. So like a lot of the places is like full of graffiti and everything. They've had like street art festivals in the past, and I've been to a couple of them actually, because like you can just wander around and see all these artists spray painting and stuff. And yeah, I just thought I'd just mention it because I want to like pro graffiti.
Yeah, there's one in Derby as well. They've had a mural up for a while now in the marketplace. So there's a big building in the marketplace that's been closed for a good few years now. And while they're doing some work on it, they put big white boards up, and they're like, well, let's not just do that. So they got somebody in to do a mural, and it's, I think they were going to take it down originally, but it stayed up because it's really quite nice. It's all like a forestry scene and plants and stuff. And Bigfoot's walking across at one point.
Yeah, I think it's pre-Banksy. So the argument is a little bit more black and white in the late 90s, whereas, Banksy is considered one of the greatest artists of the modern era, and no one knows who he is because he's a graffiti artist, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think it was a more polarizing thing in the 90s, whereas now most people will go, well, yes and no, but Banksy's Banksy kind of thing.
Was it pre-Banksy, or had we just not seen Banksy?
Yeah, true.
Because there is the whole thing is that the main theory is that he's actually probably about 50.
Well, he's been around a while, so yeah.
Yeah, so he would have been around in the 90s. That could be Banksy in the episode.
I mean, it could.
Yeah.
They storm the cafe and spot that it's a fake. The robbers are back at the bank and collecting the hidden gold.
We've missed Jeff's brilliant realization that just the acting of Michael French, it's a legitimate Slade as a detective moment. Like, nothing to do with time travel. He's just sitting there talking about... I mean, we talked before how this was originally designed because Anthony Horowitz liked Poirot. This felt like his Poirot moment. Sees a spray paint, a graffiti artist painting some bricks, pauses, and rather than having to wait till the next... after the ad break for everyone to be in a room for Poirot to confront them, he actually goes for it there and then and realises what's happened.
Yeah.
I like it because the time travel aspect, like saying this, doesn't matter. It's all about him being an actual detective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there'd been kind of like episodes that played on that before, like how he was a good detective anyway, but became complacent because he could time travel. And the time travel wasn't involved in this realization. You're absolutely right. The robbers are back at the bank and they're collecting the hidden gold that, as you say, has been disguised as bricks. Then the lads turn up and Sissons shoots at them, but Slade pursues him. I've just referred to them as the lads.
I did wonder then what you're saying. Like the way you said it makes it like they stormed in and struck a pose. Stand back, crime. The lads are here.
Get your ingots out for the lads.
Bring your bullion, bring your bullion, bring your bullion up the stairs.
Lads. That's us.
He's got some gold
That's the three of
bullion
us.
in his bag. He's got some gold bullion in his bag.
We are so laddish. Look at us being laddish.
Oh, absolutely.
Lads.
I'm going to have another decaf in between recordings.
Good.
I like the fact as well is when you see the van outside, you get the small reveal, if you're paying attention, that the woman that they interviewed earlier is driving the van.
Yeah.
So it's that thing of there's no pretense. Slade hasn't got this wrong. He is 100% right. And they're not even going to cover up the idea that he might possibly have got it wrong. The gun pulling is as abrupt as when Slade does it in previous episodes.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, Slade's got it. Oh, God, he's got a gun. And I was like, oh, yeah, Slade had a gun when it suited him in previous episodes. But Slade never pulled his gun out to return fire. He just chased him and rugby tackled him.
Which is weird because he hasn't been particularly gun shy in previous episodes. I've got a gun, so have I.
Yeah.
You know, anyway.
Maybe he left it at home.
Maybe. So, running back through the brick hole and into the tunnels, and he's still firing at him. He's a bit like a stormtrooper, doesn't it? Nothing. He runs out of bullets, and Slade pounces on him and catches him.
Morris as well manages to get one in a very slight hero moment for Morris. One of them goes for him and he manages to take him down, which I thought was quite nice. That they've been really getting on this episode and Morris actually gets a collar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even though there's obviously the motivation to go and call Holly, letting Nikki do the arrest is kind of nice as well.
Yeah.
That Nikki gets his moment too, as well as Morris.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's taken 7 episodes for either of them to look anything other than inept, but, you know, it's nice to see.
Yeah. All of this, by the way, Nicky does not lose his cap. That cap stays on his head throughout and doesn't budge.
It's a good cap.
It's a lovely cap. It goes with the scarf as well, which I thought was nice.
When Slade does call Holly, she is in the shower. Slade gives up and attempts to get Nicky to buy his lottery ticket for him. And then he heads back to the HQ.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be, initially, because they were really dragging it out of she was on her way, she was coming, that this was going to be Chloe Annett in a towel for the dads. But it's her in a massive dressing gown with wet hair.
Honestly, I'm surprised it wasn't.
Yeah.
Chloe Annett in a towel for the dads. Good on Crime Traveller for being classier than that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she still came out in an oversized dressing gown with wet hair. It's something. It's not what the dads probably would have wanted.
No. Grisham is in her office preparing her resignation when the commissioner arrives early. It's not going well, but then Slade arrives and saves her by revealing the gold, saying it worked to plan and telling them that they've caught all of the baddies. The gold was painted white to look like bricks, and he reminds, and my notes have got inverted commas there, he reminds Grisham that it was her that spotted the paint in the bag. Grisham gently, silently, and secretly bins her resignation.
Yeah.
And I was really fucking pleased.
Yeah, I was as well. It's how much, though, does the actor in this scene who's playing the police commissioner look like? If you looked up police commissioner in like an actor's dictionary, it's this guy.
You're not wrong. It's the Tash.
Yeah, he's got the bald head with the hair around the side. He looks like the eagle from the Muppets.
Sam.
Yeah.
It's Sam, yeah.
It's perfect. It's just perfect. casting.
Did you watch the recent Muppet series where he becomes all kind of like paranoid about love and he's really quite vulnerable with the fucking eagle?
The
No.
mockumentary one.
Yeah.
I
Animal will do naked if tasteful. Fucking brilliant. It's brilliant. It's so brilliant.
The last one I saw, I think it's the second one, where he has the badge off with the guy from Modern Family. Was it the guy from Modern Family's the French police, and obviously he's FBI, and they just keep having a who's got a bigger badge contest, and it just gets ridiculous. So like one of them rips open their shirt and their entire like bulletproof vest is their badge.
Back at the machine, and it breaks upon his return. She needs £200 plus VAT for a new laser refractor.
Right, okay, yeah. I know okay. I know I keep mentioning it, but so far this has had the biggest writing of how hasn't he not walked in on them? Yeah, it's the biggest I've written in my notes. It's taken up about a quarter of the page. There was like, how have they not noticed someone walk in? Yeah, okay, yeah. That's that rant done. Carry on.
Yeah. Slade is confident that Nikki's ticket will win. Holly is obviously sceptical. They arrive at the office, and they've won. Grisham thanks him for his help, and they start celebrating the lottery win. He then discovers he got 4, not 6 numbers, because Nikki got the numbers upside down. They've won £186, which doesn't even cover the price of a new laser refractor.
It's weird because, like I say, I don't remember watching this episode when it first went out. So I kind of watched this with fresh eyes. And the first thing I noticed when he wrote the numbers down was, well, all of those could be seen upside down. But yeah, I do enjoy this scene just because, everyone's being so nice to him and he's only 180 quid.
Yeah.
Morris is like, I've always liked you. And so it's like, I've never liked you. It's like, oh, he could really tank his own job here just by telling everyone what he thinks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was obvious, but it was still fun.
Oh, it was very fun, yeah.
And then at the end, Holly asks, should she drink her sparkling wine or pour it over his head? And he does it for her.
This is the thing. What's she mad about?
Yeah.
Yes, the machine's busted, but he was going to probably bust the next time it worked anyway.
Spoilers.
But, well, no, it's just broken, hasn't it, in this episode? But he went to deliberately try and get them the money they need for her to continue her work, and now she's annoyed with him about it.
Yeah.
It's not even like she got her hopes up about it, because it's literally been one day.
Well, it's significantly less shitty than what she did in the last episode as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
She can see that he's tried to make it up to her at least. But yeah, just tipping the sparkling wine over the head. And I love the fact they've got a printout of the lottery as well, of the lottery numbers, like an official branded printout.
Mm.
Yeah. All in all, it was a bit silly, but I think it's one of my favourites, actually, this episode.
Oh, it's fun from start to finish.
Yeah.
The idea of going back in time and trying to win the lottery, I think, was really well handled in this. In that he's got an idea and it should work, but time is not on his side. Sort of pun not intended. And it just keeps trying to diffuse him. But in the meantime, he's remembered what it's like to be a really good detective.
Yeah. I still think that perhaps the episode could have perhaps amped up the threat of Grissom, being like fired or something, because it just seems to be a bit like, oh yeah, I'm going to hand my notice in if you don't find it in like 12 hours. As much as the idea that you can explore the Grissom kind of Slade dynamic, that like they got some respect to each other, I still think we probably missed an episode that really dealt with that. We had, I think, no, not the last episode, but the episode before with her kind of clocking on to what Oldroyd was doing.
Yeah.
So he kind of reads that, but I don't think we've had enough real exploration of the Slade Grissom relationship for it to really hit home. Because I think because at the moment I still think that Slade probably just thinks, oh, she's a bit of an annoying boss, but I don't know. There's just something about that aspect of it that never hit right with me.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, they were fully expecting, I think, to go into a season 2. And I think that would have got explored. It's like we've talked about it before. The only reason they didn't was because of management changes at the BBC. I bet somewhere Horowitz has got scripts or at least stories written for season 2. He must have done, because he must have thought, because like we said, this did actually good numbers. So I can imagine like the relationships with everybody else would have got expanded more and looked into, especially obviously you've got Sue Johnston, so you really would look into that more with her. Part of me feels like they might have killed Nikki in season 2.
Savage.
Yeah, but to ramp it up a bit, I think somebody would have died, and they'd have to have tried to. Maybe that would have been the high drama, as they attempted to stop it and realised they couldn't. And the only person I could think they could have done that with was Nikki, because if you did it with Morris, no one would give a crap.
Yeah,
true. Or Danny.
Maybe Frank, if they wanted to kill off like a lesser character almost. Frank, the guard who's turned up a lot, maybe him. Or Charlie. Now Charlie's got a name. Maybe that was the thing, they're bringing him in because they want to kill him.
Oh, poor Charlie.
Yeah.
But what did you think of the episode as a whole then, Carl? Did you enjoy this one, or did you think it was too silly?
I enjoyed it. It does seem, I don't know whether it's because we're watching these kind of with a bit of gap in between, and the silliness does lift it away from the others a little bit, but I enjoyed the acting in it's great. So I enjoyed the actual character development of, oh yeah, Slade is a detective and he's remembered that he can do it without doing this. I mean, there wasn't much Holly in it, but it didn't call for there to be much Holly, because the whole idea being is they couldn't get hold of her. But I don't know, I enjoyed this episode. It's probably not one of my favourites out of the series, but it's still a very good episode.
How about you, Matt?
I did quite like the light entertainment, farcical elements of it. I remember saying this, I can't remember which episode it was, where it seems like the show is trying to specifically answer questions on, like, can they go back and change time? And then Slade tries to and can't. Or what happens if Slade goes on his own? Okay, this is what happens when Slade tries to go on his own and stuff. And like, okay, then what happens if they try and win the lottery with a foolproof plan? And I quite like the show taking the moment to step back and go, okay, let's answer this question.
I think you're right, but I would go as far as saying this is probably my favourite, just because I like the silliness. I like how they scupper themselves, but it's almost like the character of time is a real thing rather than just... Yeah, I really like this episode. It's probably my favourite, and I understand why you don't like it as much as I do, but I don't care. So, we've only got one episode left, and I've really enjoyed the whole thing so far.
Yeah.
I kind of wish there had been more Crime Traveller, like you said, Carl, because I would quite happily carry on doing this if there was more to do.
Yeah, no, I would as well.
I don't want to do series 2 of fucking Prince Among Men.
I don't think the people working on Prince Among Men wanted to do series 2 of Prince Among Men.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that's all we have for this episode. We've got one more Crime Traveller episode left for you next week. Carl, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at allmylinks.com/Mr. Carl. There's bits and bobs up there at the moment. I'm not doing a great deal. Follow me on TikTok. I'm enjoying messing about on TikTok at the moment. You can find me at I am Mr. Carl.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Pickadisc. You can just search all your social medias. If you find Pickadisc, it's usually me on there, which is my podcast about music. I've also got the podcast about point-and-click adventure games and narrative games called Ask Us About Loom, which, again, if you just search on social medias, if there's any left, it's probably me. And as well as Now Book Club, which covering Yellow Jackets, which I'm hoping at the time this airs, we'll have more news on season 2.
And if you're looking for me, it's at Mark Adams HC for my Twitter or Instagram. And if you want more podcastingness and you happen to be one of the weirdos that likes both Red Dwarf and the Chucky horror films, I do have another podcast about the Chucky horror films. That's called Chucky Vision, because I'm a child and there was a pun to do with kids' telly. All of the podcasts we've talked about, wherever you're listening to this episode of Shipwrecked and Comatose, if you search there, you can find them on whatever podcast method you use. So thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Shipwrecked and Comatose. And until next week,
damn it, Slade!
What?
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.
Hello, and this is Chucky Vision on the We Made This Network, the podcast for all things Chucky. I'm Dev Elson.
And I'm Mark Adams. We're two queer podcasters who love bloody horror,
Camp comedy, gay romance,
and referencing icons like Freddy, Jason, and Britney.
The Chucky films and new TV show deliver all of that, and there is still so much more to cover.
So if you want to play, find Chucky Vision on Twitter at Chucky Vision and on all good podcast providers.
And yes, the title is a Chuckle Vision pun.
Because why not?